Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for joining. Appreciate that. Hi, Todd, Mitch, Leela. Thanks for joining. It's time. Thank you very much. I'll just wait for a few more people. Ramrod, I think it is, for joining. Hi, Kimmy. Thanks for joining again, Kimmy. Thank you. Um, yeah. So I thought, Carl, thanks for joining, Carl. Really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. Uh, uh, hi. Thank you. Thanks for the love hearts. Love the love hearts. Uh, Leela, Leela. Sorry, Leela. Sorry, I pronounced that wrong. Leela Rail. Sorry about that. Hi, Tamara. Good to see you. Thanks for the love hearts. I love the love hearts. Hi, AG. Good to see you. Jan, Covington. Thanks for joining. Thank you so much, guys. It's almost Christmas here, so the love hearts are always good for the Christmas time. As you can see, I know this looks a little bit cringe. I know it does. I can't believe wasn't sure if I was going to put on the Christmas shirt or not, because I know it's don't read it. Don't read it. This, but it's like me with an I, not Levi. Oh, right, gotcha. Don't read it. But it's like, yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, got ya. Yeah. All right. Sorry for mispronouncing that. I'm trying. I'm trying. Where are you from? Yeah, where are you from? But thank you, everyone. Thank you. The love hearts is a cute way to call them. Right. Yeah. Um, yeah. So thank you, everyone, for coming. As you can see from my shirt, it is Christmas time is now approaching. Thanks, Donna. Oh, Indiana. Right, fantastic. Yeah. Where are you located at? I'm actually in Brisbane, Australia. Natasha, good to see you. So I'm in Brisbane, Australia. I'm North California. Okay, got ya. Yeah. Join. Yeah. Happy Christmas, everyone. North, yeah. So I'm in Brisbane, Australia. At the moment, I'm originally from Sydney. So but yeah, so if you're joining me for the first time, it's basically I'm an Aussie. Hi, Joe. Good to see you too. Hi, Natasha. Altona, Victoria. Wow, another Aussie. 35 below and holding. Wow. Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in Brisbane, Australia, where I am, it's really, really hot. It's like, well, in Australia, we would call it, I would say it's like 33, 34 degrees. So yeah, it's very hot in Australia at the moment. Obviously, it's our summer. It's always been a wish of mine to have like a white Christmas. So I've always American in Oz. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I've always wanted to like cool shirt. Thanks. Yeah. It's like, yeah. I haven't decided whether it's a good idea or not. I'll decide afterwards whether it's a good idea. But I thought I'd have to do like, because obviously, look, you can see the Christmas tree. There's Santa over there. So I thought, get a little bit into the Christmas spirit. It's okay to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. But yeah, so in Australia, obviously it's summer, but always like I've always wanted to. I'm glad that you can care about us. Oh, that's okay. That's Fahrenheit. That's right. Yeah, yeah, Tamara. Yeah, it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit in Australia. Yeah, at the moment in Brisbane where I am, we're actually going through a bit of a heat wave, but it's not that unusual from where I am. It's usually pretty hot here. But I have never like I've seen snow before. I've been to Europe, so I have seen snow. I've seen snow in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, but I've never had Christmas in wintertime. That's Fahrenheit. That tomorrow, that's Fahrenheit. So 33, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So we use a different system than you guys. Yeah. Um, no, not Fahrenheit, Celsius. Sorry, Celsius. I'm getting mixed up. So yeah. Um, so basically, I would love one day to go and spend Christmas in America somewhere like New York or Chicago or somewhere like that where it's a lot colder. Or one of the other places I've always wanted to spend Christmas is in Scandinavia, like Norway or Denmark or Joe, have you been to the States? I have actually been to the States, but not for a very long time. Yeah, yeah. It was a long time ago. I went to the States. I was there. I was also in Canada. So I've been to the States and Canada. Yeah. I've also been to Mexico. Where else have I been on your continent? I've been to Chile. I've been to Colombia. Um, one to the Indian, much better than Chicago. Oh, one to Indiana, much better than Chicago. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I've never thought about India. Yeah. How do most Australians view the United States right now? Be honest. Look, I think it's time. I think it's a mixed view. Obviously, Trump has made people look at the United States in a pretty negative light. Um, but I think in general, you got to distinguish. You got to distinguish between. I think a lot of Australians do as well. There's a difference between how Australians think about Trump and MAGA than how they think about the people, right? So I think do Canada or Scandinavian countries to experience Christmas? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Norway. So Scandinavia is one of my favorite areas. So it's, Denmark, Norway, Sweden. So I've always wanted to do Christmas in one of those areas. So that's one of my wishes to do Christmas there. But even in North America, Canada or America, isn't it getting to a point where they're starting to look at America that way, kind of the way it's going in Europe? Isn't it getting to a point where they're starting to look at America that way, kind of the way? Yeah, yeah, it is. Look, a lot of people in Australia, um, they don't understand how someone like Trump got voted in twice. Do you know what I mean? I think, to be honest with you, the first time Trump ran, and the first time Trump ran, it was kind of we're in the States. Oh yeah. I've just been to the North bits like Chicago, that sort of thing. So North New York, that where was it? Somewhere else. Now, the main reason was I was heading to Canada. So Canada was actually my destination. I just happened to fit in a little bit of that as well on the way there. So not a lot. So I haven't done a lot. I want to go back and do a lot more. It's so awesome that you care about US politics. Yeah, thank you so much, Donna. I've always had a fascination with US politics for a very long time, and I think that's a pretty common thing in a lot of other countries. Obviously, I've always had an interest in politics, but I think the reason why people in Australia, Europe, Scandinavia do look at America a lot, because a lot of people like myself who comment on American politics, we are often told to mind our own business. So when I post something on Substack or Twitter or somewhere else, I will often get, mostly MAGA will say to me, "You're an Aussie, mind you." Hi, Peter. Good to see you again, Peter. They will often say to me, Joe Thomas, mind your own business. Worry about your own country. Stop talking about us so much. Why are you obsessed with it? America. And so I do get a lot of that. And my answer to that is, it's not like I'm obsessed about a small country who doesn't impact the rest of the world. I think the reason why a lot of Australians, Europeans talk about, we are feeling so alone, ungrateful. Yeah. I think a lot of the reasons why a lot of people in my country and other countries talk about it is because it's hard to look away. It's like a train wreck, right? And also, the United States is the most powerful country on the planet. So what America does affects the rest of the world, including Europe, Australia, Asia, because it's the most. I mean, look at Venezuela. If you're living in Venezuela now, you're worried about America like bombing you, right? If you're in Greenland, right? Trump has talked about invading Greenland, which is like ridiculous, right? He's put tariffs on the rest of the world, including Australia. So everything the United States, because it's so powerful economically and militarily, impacts the rest of us. So I do find it strange when people say, mind your own business, because it is our business, because everything the President of the United States does affects the rest of the world. We're not talking about New Zealand, right? Now, if I was obsessed with everything New Zealand does, that would be a little bit weird, because like what New Zealand does doesn't affect the rest of the world. It won't be in a while. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think a lot of Australians, they look at America. Also, what worries us as well is sometimes America sets the trend for a lot of things. So, for example, they will set the trend for how politics is. So, if you have like when Trump got into power, he had a lot of momentum behind him, right, in 2016 and then in 2024. And I think that created a lot of momentum in a lot of far right wing parties all around the world. So if you look at Europe, Scandinavia, a lot of countries, a lot of far right wing parties, like if you look at the UK, you have the far right wing party of Nigel Farage, who's now in the polling coming first, right? And Nigel Farage in England, he sees himself as like a Trump supporter. So I think Trump, and now I know it's not just about Trump. Trump is just a symptom of a lot of these things, like the far right wing parties. A lot of it has to do with inflation, cost of living, and all that stuff. And of course, immigrants always get blamed for that. So it's a bad time to be an immigrant at the moment anywhere in the world because they're getting the blame for everything. And and also like you probably had seen in Australia we had a terrible terrorist attack in Australia a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago now, and it was awful. It was an anti-Semitic attack. It was grotesque corporate greed. Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. There's a lot of stuff that I see in America, and I think part of the fascination about America is also that um, I think it's like the things that happen in America is so surreal that it's like I would say Trump is extremely poor health. Yeah, exactly, Donna. He is absolutely. I think that some of the things in America is there's one thing is that we're kind of like in shock that he's the president of the free, like the president of the most biggest military. Just met a New Zealander, Mitch. Just met a New Zealander, SeaWorld, Orlando, Florida. Wonderful. Oh, that's fantastic, Mitch. Our cousins in New Zealand. Yeah, we have a lot in common with them. So I would suggest you wait until 20th December, wait to see the cell. Yeah, I agree. Tamara, we will be a good history lesson. Yeah, absolutely, Tamara. I think you're absolutely right. I think what's happening in America at the moment, in years to come, a lot of people are going to look back on this and see like how did this happen? Why did it happen? Right? What was going on in the United States? Because Trump, Trump can't, in my opinion, Trump can only take power because there's something going on in the country, right? He can't take like I don't. He has to mention. I don't particularly think Trump could take power in Australia, and I'll tell you why I don't think Trump could have been a prime minister of Australia, right? I think because in Australia we have a thing called compulsory voting. Now there will be a lot of people out there, like libertarians and stuff. And I once spoke to the ex-congressman Joe Walsh on his podcast, on his Substack Live, and we were talking about Australia, and I said, "Oh, look, Joe, we actually have compulsory voting." And now a lot of people know Joe Walsh is actually a libertarian, and he was like, "Compulsory voting? What?" Like he was like shocked that. But when you take it in consideration, compulsory voting, I hope you are right, not in Australia. Yeah, compulsory voting in Australia is just a $20 fine, right? So you just get a $20 fine, and you can get out of it by just sending an email to the government saying, "I'll stick." So there's nothing going to happen to you, but it creates a culture where everybody votes, right? So from when you go to school, everyone thinks they have to vote. So and what happens in America, your system, because you don't have compulsory voting, right? What you have to do is you have to bring. There's so few people that vote in America. Like I can't remember what it is, but in Australia, the percentage of people that vote is around 90%. So it's really big. So why does that make a difference in terms of who you bring in? In America, when you don't have compulsory voting and so many people don't vote, what happens is you have to rely on your base to win. So MAGA, Trump, was really good at getting his base out by saying racist things. Tamara, just like Trump is normalizing all the horrible things going on in compulsory voting, could actually normalize a really good habit. Exactly. And again, Tamara, it's all about the implementation. Like now, if people were getting in big trouble for not voting, I wouldn't be for that. But it's such a $20 fine or you email something. So it's not really, it's more like a civic duty. I think Australia sees voting as a civic duty. And you only have to do it once every 3 or 4 years. So it's not like you're being forced to do something like, and also if you grow up in a country, you have no clue about why he got elected. JF, I actually disagree. I actually think I have a very good clue about why he got elected. I'm not saying that not compulsory voting is not the only reason. There were other reasons why he got elected, but compulsory voting would have helped stop someone like Trump not get elected. And this is why. In America, you have what's called, because you don't have compulsory voting, you have to bring out the base, right? And Trump was very good at bringing out the base. Now, the people in Australia, the people in the middle, now, the people who don't vote in America, the number one group that doesn't vote in America are swing voters and independent voters, right? And most of these people would not have voted for Trump. If they were forced to, they would have probably voted centre left. Now, these are more what you would call normie voters, right? They're more like centrist voters. Now, in Australia, because everyone comes out to vote, the actual political parties can't rely on only the base, right? They have to bring out the middle. And to bring out the middle, you can't be crazy. Like you have to be more sort of mainstream. You can't be saying they're eating cats and dogs. You can't be, all that stuff. It's not going to go down well. So Trump won in a sense because of people who didn't vote, right? For people who they hit the Epstein files, but he raped, yeah, yeah. And look, it's not about, for me, I think, for me, the number one reason why Trump got in 2016 was because a lot of people in America, and not just in America, but around the world, wanted to blow up the system, right? They wanted to kill the system. And they saw Trump, whether they liked him or not, as a reason to, because he was going in there, right? In 2016, during the primaries, Trump went in there and he went after fellow Republicans. And he called people like Jeb Bush and he blamed them for the war in Iraq, and he called them neocons. Censor is a majority under the bell curve historically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so he went after them. He attacked his own side, and then he went after the left. Now, Hillary Clinton was, this was because it's excessive, profound. Yeah. So a lot of people, in the 2016, there was a trend going around the world, not just in America, but in Europe as well, of people wanting the outsider. It was the start of the outsider, not the insider, not the establishment, not that he sends kids from Paget to Epstein. Yeah. And so basically that was part of the reason how Trump won is he positioned themselves as the outsider. Then you had Hillary Clinton, who to a lot of some people in America was considered the insider, the establishment, right? So you had the outsider versus the establishment. And there was a lot of people in America in 2016 who wanted to blow up the system, right? And, and it wasn't just people like that. It was people like, even like I said before, Joe Walsh was a supporter of Trump. There was a lot of Republicans who were supportive of Trump. A lot of libertarians supported Trump in 2016. And I think because of that, Trump manipulated the system, right? He lied his way into power. He pretended to be the outsider. He manipulated the system. He said he was going to go in and smash the system. And so he conned a lot of people into believing something. But he could only do that because the objective conditions or the external conditions were right to do it. In my opinion, I don't think Trump could have won 4 years earlier. I don't think he could have won because the white Christian nationalist white supremacy has been the largest terror group in the country. Yeah. And look, Rebecca, that's an interesting thing because I think there's a lot of the big differences that you're seeing now between when Trump was in power. Trump doesn't lie. Yeah, that's right. So, Trump was in power the first time when Trump was in power the first time, there was a lot of coding that was done around the racism. It wasn't so obvious. Do you know what I mean? They weren't coming out and saying white Christian nationalist things like they do now. Now everything, and that's why they used to say things like, "Oh, the left call everybody racist. The left call this racist. If you do this, you're a racist," and stuff like that. But there's a big difference between Trump first term and Trump now. And now the difference is they're so open about their white nationalism. Like I was watching the Turning Point USA today, and I was watching JD Vance doing a speech at Turning Point USA, and he was talking about how you no longer have to apologize for being white, right? You no longer have to apologize for being white. Like the idea that you had to apologize for being white is just ridiculous, right? So that never happened. Um, and he then JD Vance then said, um, unlike the left, so unlike the Democrats, we don't treat anyone different because of race. So this is what JD Vance said at the Turning Point USA. I think it was today or yesterday. I don't know your time. And he basically got up there and he said, unlike the Democrats, we don't talk about race. Now, the amount of lying that is going on in Turning Point USA is incredible because on the one hand, they will say, oh, it's the left who are obsessed. Now, when they talk about race, everyone on the right always talks about left-wing identity politics. And what they mean, obviously, is, black people, brown people, LGBT community, they'll talk about identity politics in that terms. On the right, it's all about white identity politics. So it's not that they're against identity politics. They love identity politics, but they love, hi Dave from California, good to see you. They love identity politics, but they love identity politics only for white people. So when you see JD Vance say that that MAGA doesn't care about people's race is just ridiculously, like, it's almost comical, right? How bad it is, because unlike 2016 and 2020, this is a very different type of MAGA movement. It's all masked off. Back then, they did try to hide it. They coded things. They weren't as obvious as they are now. So when the left went after them and called them racist, they could get away with it to some degree because they would go, what are you talking about? I never said anything. And it's to some degree true. They were not like they are now, right? This is a big one. Since 2016, there hasn't been a day without Trump grabbing at least one headline, earthquakes, flooding. Though you are correct about the points you make, the added news in front of the headline, good news or bad, keeps the name in the headline. Yeah. And look, I agree, Mitch, that Trump is very, very good at getting attention and he's very good at getting eyeballs. And if in this day and age where it's not everyone is going home at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and watching the same news, everyone is now either distracted by TikTok, streaming services. There is so many more people now who don't follow politics and they don't follow the news. And so therefore, to get someone's eyeballs is extremely, extremely important. And media. Yeah. And so Trump is very good at getting eyeballs. And that's why I think he's done so well. Now, I will put a caveat on this. I think Trump is very good at getting, it works in your favor when you're not the incumbent, right? So in 2024 last year, Trump was getting eyeballs, but all the blame for inflation was being put on Joe Biden or Kamala Harris because people blame incumbent governments because they're the ones in power. So when Trump was getting all the eyeballs, he could say this is Biden's fault, this is Kamala's fault, right? Now, I think there's a difference between getting attention in power and when you're not in power. I think it works against him. I think it works against Trump when he's in power. If you look at 2020, the year of COVID, right? Trump was getting a lot of attention, but the attention was all about COVID, taking, like injecting yourself with bleach, all that sort of stuff. So the attention wasn't good. America was the lowest of the world inflation. Yeah, it was. Yeah. And so I really do believe this. I think Trump, in terms of politics, I'm talking in terms of marketing and that, is probably the most effective leader anywhere in the world as being the outsider when he's going against someone, but he's not the incumbent. But I think Trump is the worst at marketing and being a politician when it comes to when he's actually in power. So every time he wins, he ends up becoming unpopular, right? Because I think he's very good at running against someone, but when you're the incumbent, you can't blame the other person for everything. Well, you can, but nobody's believing it, right? But when you're not in power, this is what Trump. Listen, this is actually true. In 2024, the Republican Party ran 99% negative ads against the Democrats. That is highly, highly unlikely, unusual. Generally speaking, negative ads versus positive ads will be 60-40, right? And that's what it was. Now, he ran over 90% negative ads because that's what Trump is good at. He's good at running negative ads, running against someone. But you can't do that when you're the incumbent. So, and even though inflation was true, it is true that inflation was the lowest in the world, in America, much lower than Australia. It's still a very hard story to sell to people, right? Because if you're in America in 2024, because inflation is accumulative, right? So it goes up and then it might stop going up as much, right? It goes up, but then it goes up slightly, but it's still going up. It's just going up. So it's still up from when he got into power. So it's not going down, right? So I think it's a hard story to say to they never ever tried to sell it. There's nothing to sell. It's the fact. Yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree. I think they did try to sell it. I think they did try to sell it. They tried to say that the economy is not as bad as you think it is. Biden was coming out and saying it's not that bad. It's actually good. This is inflation, stuff like that. I just don't think the thing you need to understand is in 2024, all around the world, right, there was more incumbent governments kicked out anywhere in modern history. There's never been a year like 2024 in modern times where incumbent governments in all Western countries were kicked out, except for, I think, the one country. And it didn't matter whether they were left wing or right wing. Exactly. They sold it like that instead of comparing it to other countries and show details. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I still don't think it would have made a difference because it's not about America's doing better than Australia or America's doing better than Europe. It's about how they're doing themselves. And so if you say to someone, if you're in trouble, right? If I'm suffering, like if I'm under financial stress, and then someone comes up to me and said, "Yeah, but if you're in Africa, you'd be way worse off, way worse off." It's not really going to make me feel better because I'm still, you know what I mean? I'm still going through it myself. And so to a lot of people who rents were going up, who home prices couldn't get in there, cost of living was still up. Remember, inflation is accumulative, right? So it still was up. It just wasn't going up as fast. So it wasn't like it was going back to pre-COVID times. So I think it was an impossible story to sell. I think history-wise, it will be a good story to tell. I think when people look back in 20 years, they'll say Joe Biden did a lot better than people gave him credit for. But the other thing is a lot of people are not paying attention to what Joe Biden was saying, Kamala Harris. They're basing it on their everyday lived experience. So they're not basing who they're going to vote on based on what they hear on CNN or Fox News. They're basing it on how much their rent is, can they buy a home, petrol prices, grocery prices. And so it doesn't really matter. So when it's like Trump comes out and he says, "Oh no, things are really good. Things are great. Things are good." It's not going to work, right? It's not like the other things he could lie about because people are living it every day. And if you're living something every day, you can't lie about that. You can't say to someone, "Oh, your life is great." And then you get up in the morning and you can't afford your rent and you can't afford to buy a home. Like they're not going to, I mean, MAGA is stupid, but they're not that stupid. Well, most, and he's losing a lot of the independents. He's losing a lot of the swing voters. This is an interesting thing. Like, generally in MAGA, the core base, right, the Republicans, like out of, what percentage of Republicans corporate did hyperinflation, they profited in record levels. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, the thing I'll say is this is going to be a problem. This could be a problem for a lot of incumbent governments because since COVID, there is something that's going on around the world. And I think as an Australian who looks at American politics, but also my country in Europe, you get to see a lot of trends that happen. And I would recommend people in America look outside of America in terms of, and I'm talking about other Western countries, and see what's happening in those countries, because what you'll find is that there are generally worldwide trends in politics. So if something's happening in England, Scandinavia, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, whatever, you will generally find it's going to happen in America as well. As I said, the incumbent government thing, where incumbent governments got kicked out all around the world, that happened everywhere, including America, Europe, everywhere. So it's always good to keep an eye on what's going around the world because it's not always about what Trump is doing or or all this sort of stuff. When I can't afford 200 gallons over 100 gallons of heating, I couldn't give a rat's behind what's going. Yeah, exactly, Tamara. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's at the end of the day, people are blaming what's happening post COVID is people are blaming who's ever in power. Unfortunately, what I'm about to say is probably true. Trump is not unpopular because of the Epstein files. Now, don't get me wrong, the Epstein files has made him less popular, but it's not the reason why he's going so badly. He's not unpopular because he called a journalist piggy. That's not the reason. He's not unpopular because he said that he didn't care about Rob Reiner dying. He's not unpopular because he says crazy stuff all the time. Because he's been doing that for 10 years and he's still won elections. He's unpopular to the level he is because of cost of living, because of inflation. And it has not much to do with what he's like as a person. That's the sad part about this whole Trump thing. It's not, I'm sure that the Epstein files have an effect. I'm sure that some other things have an effect, but I don't think they're the things that are the majority of his polling. The majority of the reason why people don't like him is unfortunately nothing to do with his character and everything to do with how much their rent paying, how much their home prices are, how much grocery prices are. And in some ways, that's a bit of a sad thing, right? It's a bit of a sad thing that it's things like that that's turning people against him and not who he is as a person, right? And we saw that in 2024 when, last year, he was showing up in court every day. Remember, he was in court and, the documents case, the Jack Smith documents case, you had the, trying to overthrow the government. He was in court all the time. He was found liable sexual assault, right? All these things happened last year before the election. And the polling showed he slightly kept going up, right? And that's because many people were not paying attention to everything that was going on. And so on the left, people were going, why are they voting in this person? He's such an awful person. And the reason for that is because they weren't paying attention like we were. They weren't watching, they weren't on Twitter, they weren't on Substack. All they were worried about is bringing up their family, how much rent, home prices, grocery. That was what was driving their reason to go and vote. Yeah. And that's happening all around the world as well. So, but there's no doubt about it. And going back to Turning Point USA, doesn't that make America think twice about American values? Yeah. Doesn't make, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it does. But I will say this is that what happened in America is that Trump is particularly a foul person, right? He's particularly, a bad person, right? But if you look at the UK, Nigel Farage isn't that great. He's not a good, he's a far right. He doesn't like immigration. He does, he's not the centre right party. He's the far right party, and he's coming first. And in other places like Germany, the far is a pathetic. Yeah, exactly. The far right parties are also coming first. So I think what we see is that people are willing to bypass someone's character if they think they can make their everyday living experience better. I think people will overlook an authoritarian. They will overlook someone who says awful things if they think they can help them with rent prices, home prices, And, even though he lied in 2024 that he was going to do all that, he did lie about it. People wanted to believe those lies. They wanted to believe that he was going to, inflation the first day and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, if you look, I think that's the beginning of the breakdown of our society, just like that happened many times in US history. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this, Gina and Johnny, yeah, I think a lot of this is also got to do with how we consume our news. So, with social media, because we're all getting different news. It's a very fractured type of news organization. So people get stuck into these echo chambers. And then, so if you're in the MAGA echo chamber and Trump does something bad, then you're never going to find out about it. And if you do hear about it, you're just going to go, well, that's a conspiracy. That's a lie. Or what about Joe Biden? Joe Biden did this or Joe Biden did that. And so a lot of people they will justify voting for Trump because they will say, well, Joe Biden wasn't that great or the Democrats weren't that great. So, so I think from that point of view, you can justify things because Democrats are not perfect. I mean, Republicans are way worse, but Democrats are not perfect. And all it takes is and that I think that's Trump's tactic is he constantly goes after Democrats. He'll call Democrats corrupt. He'll say Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, and it creates mud, right? It creates enough mud and enough fog. It's like a fog of war, like a fog of politics that people might think they're both as bad as each other. And once you fall into they're both as bad as each other, then it's easy for Trump to get away with a lot of things. So and then if you think they're both as bad as each other, then you will probably you'll then vote on things like economy, right? So again, I think people they're not connected to politics the way we were before. And I think you've got to be careful. Like when I think about Trump and he does something really bad, right? He does something really bad, like the Rob Reiner thing the other day, or he says something, he calls up a journalist piggy or something like that. And people on the left will go, I can't believe it's because a lot of people they're not paying attention to this stuff, right? But the white supremacy thing in the Republican Party is 100% a real thing. And unlike earlier, we like JD Vance getting up at Turning Point USA and saying, oh, the left, unlike the left, we don't care about your race is the most ridiculous thing because the Trump administration they want to change the refugee policy. And they want to change the refugee policy so only mostly white South Africans are allowed into America. So only so let's get this right. JD Vance goes on Turning Point USA and says his party doesn't care about race, but they only want to let white South Africans into the country. Like, again, this is not like 2016, 2020, where they created enough wriggle room for them to get out of being called racist because it was more coded. It wasn't as obvious. But if your government wants to only allow white South Africans into your country, he's a roach. Thank God he's dementia. Yeah. And so you can't argue that that's not a racist policy. That is 100% a racist policy. And Matt Walsh, who's another like right wing person, said the same thing. He said that he would like to see a more European race. You got Laura Loomer, right, who's like the Rasputin of the MAGA movement, going around like there was that Brown University shooting that they had, right, and you've got and Laura Loomer is tweeting out a picture of a Muslim guy who went to the university and tweeted out his name and a picture of this Muslim person and saying, why is this Muslim person deleted their account? Basically saying that Muslim person was the shooter at Brown shooting, right? She had no evidence. She has millions of followers, and she tweets out a picture of a Muslim guy who goes to Brown University. Then we find out that actually wasn't him. It was some Portuguese national or someone from Portugal, right? Not a Muslim person. And then instead of apologizing to the innocent victim, but imagine saying this person's name, right, is now all over online media, this Muslim person's name, as a potential, as someone who had killed two people, during the shootings. And she now turns around, she doesn't apologize, she doesn't care. Like, I don't understand how you can get away with that. In Australia, you would 100% get your ass sued for defamation. You would 100%. You would have almost no chance of winning that, which is why in Australia you wouldn't see someone like Laura Loomer in Australia saying something like that because she'd be too scared because of defamation laws here. And I think in America, your defamation laws should be stronger. I think they should be stronger because how can someone like Laura Loomer, who has this massive audience, right, be allowed to say that a random Muslim person was a killer? This is insane, right? So again, you got JD Vance, Turning Point USA, saying he doesn't care about race, doesn't care about religion. Well, but then talks about America being a white Christian nationalist state. They don't talk about the separation of church and state. They don't talk about, they don't talk about the fact that they go after Muslim people. They don't talk about any of that stuff. So yeah, again, it's all hypocrisy. None of it is kind of like, none of it's based on reality. Calling yourself a Christian state kind of goes against the First Amendment. And the First Amendment was that you wouldn't treat any religion differently as any other religion. Yeah. So, I think there's no doubt that this administration is a racist administration. And I'm not saying that because they've used some coded language. I'm saying that because they're basically admitting they're a white nationalist state or something like that. So yeah, it's been very, very strange to see how open, right? Especially during the Turning Point USA rallies, you had Megyn Kelly, right? Megyn Kelly going, sorry, it was Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro did this speech at Turning Point USA where he openly attacked Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson for starting conspiracies, right? Then you had Megyn Kelly, who's kind of in the middle saying, well, I don't want to cancel anyone. I think what's going on in the right-wing media at the moment, the online right-wing media with Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, is that you're seeing, and Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist, is you're seeing the online media space for MAGA is pretty much conspiratorial. It has a lot of the people who follow them are very conspiratorial people. So if you want to get a lot of views and clicks on right wing media online with Candace Owens, a lot of the thing is they all share an audience. So Candace Owens shares an audience with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson shares an audience with Megyn Kelly. So they're all sharing the audience. So when they fight each other and Candace Owens says more crazy things, then the audience will go to who's ever crazy. It's like they're having like the most crazy conspiratorial person will win the war, right? That's how it works. If you're willing to go further than the other person, you will win, right? Because all the audience cares about is conspiracies, all that sort of thing. And so they will get the biggest audience. In a way, I see Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson as like they have like a soap opera show, but the soap opera is not about who's dating who or who's what I mean. It's conspiracy theory opera, soap opera. The clickbait as hell extremism because the norm rather than the center. Yeah, exactly, Tamara. Yeah, and Tamara, the thing is that the algorithms online algorithms, they reward them. The more extreme you are online, the more you get rewarded by the algorithms, right? So when Candace Owens says, when someone pushes back a little bit, right? Like Ben Shapiro sort of says, oh, um, they're going too far with the conspiracies and all stuff like that. It's also important to say that Candace Owens came from the Daily Wire. So, like Ben Shapiro was Candace Owens, they worked together for years at the Daily Wire. So the idea, right? They know each other. Where did Tucker Carlson came from? Tucker Carlson came from Fox News. These aren't like fringe people that came from the internet. They came from the Daily Wire and they came from Fox News. It's just now that they're living to make a living. They're living in online, and when you're online, you're the thing that gets people going online is conspiracies. The thing that gets people if you were to open up a YouTube channel online, and you were just doing center left or center right material, you can pretty much forget it. You will get almost no one watching you. You get an audience, exactly. And consider that most of us spent 3 years in isolation. But yeah, and Tamara, that's exactly right. This got made worse by COVID. That's a good point, Tamara. It was already getting bad before COVID, but COVID accelerated it. When everyone was at home on the internet and they got into these it was either COVID conspiracies or and now it's soap opera conspiracies. It's like, Emmanuel Macron's wife was actually born a man, right? Could you imagine, like 10, 15 years ago, someone with the audience of Candace Owens pushing a ridiculous conspiracy that Emmanuel Macron's wife was born a man, and not talking about it once or twice. She spent like a year obsessing about it, right? Obsessing about like that she was born with absolutely no proof whatsoever. And of course, the Macrons are now suing them. And then Tyler Robinson, I think Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. I think most of the evidence shows that. But that would be in her world, that would be too mainstream. So instead, she said it was Israel, right? After a while, then she said, actually, it wasn't Israel. It was actually the French government who killed him, right? And then she actually tied the murder of Charlie Kirk to Emmanuel Macron's wife being born a man. It was just like soap opera. And the funniest thing is, if you read the comments underneath, it's like a lot of people going, Candace, she's the only one talking about this. She's the only truth teller out there. And then people will say things like, why is no one else talking about this? Why is nobody else talking about Emmanuel Macron? So this is the craziness of the conspiracy theory world. Tucker Carlson does this as well. They will come up with some crazy conspiracy, right? And then they will say, ask yourself this: why is mainstream media not talking about Emmanuel Macron's wife being born a man? And then people will go, oh, that's right. No, they don't talk about that. Why don't they talk about that? And then he'll go, well, that's because it's a conspiracy. So if mainstream media doesn't talk about something, that means they're covering up. That's the craziness of how they try to frame everything. Like it's like, I'm a truth teller because I'm willing to talk about stuff that mainstream media or Tucker or Candace, maybe it's because it's not true. Maybe the reason people aren't talking about it is not because it's a cover up. Maybe they're not talking about it because it's complete batshit crazy stuff that's not true, right? And so again, this online space, and then you have someone like Nick Fuentes, and then it's a group thing gone viral, pun intended. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the funny thing is, Tamara, is that a lot of these people, they will call the left-wing people sheep, or they'll say the left-wing people, they believed everything about COVID and stuff like that. And yet they believe everything Tucker tells them. They believe everything Candace tells them. And I think there's been a lot of people know that Trump normalized lying, but I think he also normalized crazy, right? I think he normalized crazy to a big degree. And that's the reason why you can have someone like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson saying, or Trump, says crazy stuff all the time. When Trump and RFK Jr. were talking about the connection between Tylenol, right, and autism, and then Trump gets up and he says, "Well, there's a reason why Cuba doesn't have any autism. They do, by the way, is because they don't use Tylenol." So the craziness is all through the MAGA movement, and the thing is that 10, 15 years ago, if Obama got up and said something like that, that would be the end of his career. Now, because we're so used to living in this crazy world now, and craziness has been normalized, that barely made the news, right? So Candace Owens, someone who had millions of followers, or Tucker Carlson, or Megyn Kelly, Alex Jones is now like this. This was funny. Alex Jones said the other day that he's worried that Candace Owens might be going down too many rabbit holes on the internet. Alex Jones is saying that Candace Owens might be a little bit crazy. You know what I mean? Could you imagine that? Alex Jones, the Sandy Hook guy, the guy who based his whole career on conspiracy theories, is worried that Candace Owens might be too much into conspiracy theories. This is the craziness of the new online media, where you have Alex Jones is now the rational thought in this conversation. He's obviously not, but compared to, say, Candace Owens, compared to Tucker Carlson, he's the one coming in going, guys, calm this down. You guys are just, it's too many conspiracies. You guys are going too crazy. This is too wild. And it's Alex Jones who's doing this, right? So they're out crazying Alex Jones, and Alex Jones's audience is now getting smaller because people are willing to go. So this is the thing. Someone will eventually come around and say something even crazier than Candace Owens, right? And then Candace Owens might go, "No, I don't believe that." And as soon as she says, "I don't believe that," Candace Owens will now get pushed aside, like Megyn Kelly and that did, right? And now Candace Owens will be part of the mainstream, and then that new person, whoever that new person is, that will be the new person. Now Candace Owens sold out. She's no longer part of this because the audience, the online audience, right? They don't want any pushback at all. As soon as anybody goes, "I'm not sure about this conspiracy, I don't believe it," you've lost the audience. They're not interested in that. They only want 100% conspiracies. So that's what happened. Tucker Carlson, right, was saying, Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson have said a lot of conspiratorial things. But Candace Owens took it to the next level. And because Nick Fuentes wouldn't go along with this, right, wouldn't go along with what she was saying, Nick Fuentes got pushed aside and started losing some members. And his own audience was saying, "What's happened to Nick Fuentes? Nick Fuentes has sold out. Nick Fuentes, he's been bought out. Israel got to him. Israel is part. It's all the same thing." And Candace Owens is now the anointed one because she's saying yes to every conspiracy. But eventually, I guarantee you, Candace Owens will get to a subject, right, that she will go, "I don't believe that," and she'll get pushed aside, and this new person will go. This is basically just a grift, right? I have no idea whether Candace Owens believes what she says or Tucker Carlson believes what they say. I don't think it even really matters. But maybe it's possible they're believing their own shit because they live in this. They're 24/7 online, and they're being captured by their audience. So their audience wants them to do this, so they have to give the audience what they want to do. Otherwise, if they push back against their audience will go looking for someone who will give them that. And we've already seen that. Ben Shapiro has lost almost all his audience, right? His audience have now gone to Tucker Carlson. They've gone to Candace Owens, to people who are willing to go. Now, Ben Shapiro is now the insider. Ben Shapiro is not, right? Ben Shapiro lies all the time. Matt Walsh, who also works for him, lies all the time. Matt Walsh, who famously wrote the book, did a documentary called "What Is a Woman?" And What is a Woman was basically about the whole trans thing, about, what is a woman. And so he did a documentary, got a lot of viewers. And that document, exactly, tomorrow. And he did this documentary. It was all about, how people are transitioning and all that sort of stuff. So in that documentary, he went and spoke to like a lot of experts. You see him go speak to doctors and all this stuff and like that. And he talks about puberty blockers and all this sort of stuff. Then he goes on Joe Rogan's podcast. And then on Joe Rogan's podcast, right, Joe Rogan, he's promoting this documentary he did. And Joe Rogan says, how many young people would be on puberty blockers now? Underage, and and uh, and he looked up, Matt Walsh, Matt Walsh just did a documentary on all this stuff, right? And he looked up and he went, oh, I'd say it'd be in the millions. And then so Joe Rogan looked it up. He had his producer looked it up. It was 800. So the person who just he just made a documentary on children, trans people, had no idea whether it was in the millions or in the hundreds. That just goes to show that these people do not believe what they're saying. They're grifters and they're con artists. Because if he really, really believed it, how could you make a documentary that is all about puberty blockers, that is all about trans people, and you don't know whether it's millions or hundreds of people that are on it? Again, this goes to prove that these people actually don't mean what they say. You have someone like Ben Shapiro, right? And Ben Shapiro is one of these other people as well, who will often say things like, he's a big Second Amendment guy. He's all for, guns this, guns that. We should never take guns away from anyone. But then there was, I think, one or two shootings that involved a trans person. And then after that, he said, well, we should look about taking guns away from anybody who's trans, right? So again, it's they don't believe in anything they say. If you're a big proponent of the Second Amendment, but you only care about trans people, maybe it's more about trans people. If you're pushing a documentary that you're worried about young people with puberty blockers or young trans people, and then you don't know the fact, does it matter if they meant it? Is the harm different? Yeah, I don't think it matters that much, Kimmy. But I think it matters in the sense of you can come from a place of. I think there's a difference in the sense of if you look at if somebody lies in defamation law in America, right? You have to prove to win a defamation case in America. You don't just have to prove that the person lied, but you have to prove that the person knew they were lying, right? So with the Fox News defamation suit, like a couple of years ago, where they had to pay out like $800 million, Fox News had to pay out to Dominion voting machines. Remember, they because of that, right? Now, for the Dominion voting machines to win that defamation case, they had to prove not that. So if you're a journalist and you say something, but you believe what you're saying, you can't be sued for defamation because you said it in good faith. You didn't know it. However, what happened with the Dominion lawsuit is that during discovery, the early stages of the lawsuit, they were able to subpoena private messages from people like Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, right, and Fox News producers. And in those private text messages, they could see that Tucker Carlson did not believe the 2020 election was stolen. He was talking to his producer, but when he went on Fox News, he was doing the opposite. So they had concrete proof that people at Fox News knew the election wasn't stolen because they had said it on text messages, but then went on Fox News and said the opposite. So intention or the fact that they actually knew they were lying is how they lost the lawsuit, right? Or they had to settle the lawsuit. Because you can, so I think there is a difference. I think the outcome might not be that different, whether you know it, whether you nobody that watches Fox News, nobody that watches Fox News, yeah, exactly. You'd be surprised how many people, well, you probably wouldn't be surprised how many people at Fox News know nothing about the Dominion lawsuit, Fox News. And the reason I know most of them don't know about it is because out of that whole, it affected if they were in trouble. It affected if they, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It affects you because, that's the thing, like with Laura Loomer posting that, that picture of the Muslim guy and accusing him of being the killer in the Brown University shooting. Like, she knows, right? They are crazy white supremacists that use trans people as weapons or as means to further the jet. Yeah, yeah. They will use whoever they can take advantage of. It's either trans people, minority groups, Somalians, people from Somalia, Haitians. They will pick, any one of those groups, and simultaneously they will make white people out to be the biggest victims on the planet. The new MAGA movement, right? The way they try to get around the whole white thing is it's not necessary. It's not they don't just come out. They don't come out and say white people are better. They're not doing that. So that's how they try to get around it. They're not saying white people are better than black people. They're not. They will just say that white people are being victimized. So the way they get around it is by saying you can't. You got to apologize for being white these days. White people. There's a white genocide in South Africa at the moment by black people. So they're MAGA want to position white people as the new the black people from the Jim Crow era, right? They want to be the victims now. It's white identity victim politics, right? I mean, I don't think anybody believes that, right? But yeah, so I think again, with a lot of this stuff that we're seeing at the moment, it's a lot of it is based on racism and things like that, and they can't fight it as much as they used to because they're being a lot more honest about it. They're being a lot more freer about it. Even though they're not going to come out and say they're racist and stuff like that, but it is to some degree a very racist comment. You had Dan Bongino this week as well resign as the FBI, deputy director. And the thing about Dan Bongino that I find interesting is he spent like 2023, 2024, 2022, just he had his own podcast, right? And then he'd go on all these podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience, and all he talk about, he got famous and he made a lot of money, by the way, by talking about the Epstein files, by talking about the deep state, by doing all this sort of stuff, right? He was all conspiracies and all that. That's how he got big, right? And then Trump brings him into the Republican Party, and partly because he had a lot of sway with the podcasters. Then he gets the deputy director's job. He's in there, right? And then suddenly, after about 3 months, he starts complaining about the long hours. He's like, "Oh, there's so many, there's long hours. I don't get to see my family. I can't do this." And then he starts complaining about the paperwork. You wouldn't believe how much paperwork there is when I'm constantly doing paperwork. I'm staring at full walls. I don't get to go outside my office. And it just, to me, encapsulates the difference between being a podcaster and actually governing, right? These people were like complaining about the Biden administration 24/7, right? Oh, they did this, they did that, all this sort of stuff, just complained about everything like that. And because Dan Bongino had never worked in government, he had no idea. He now realizes that there's a big difference between talking shit on a podcast for 4 hours, right? And then actually governing, where you actually have to do paperwork. You have to take your job seriously. It's not like a microphone in front of you. We're talking now, talk for 3 or 4 hours. And for people like Joe Rogan and all these podcasters, who helped Trump win the election, I think it goes to show is that, we have to at least, respect the fact that under the Biden administration, there were people doing real work, right? And we have to respect the fact that just because you're an outsider doesn't mean you're better, right? It doesn't mean you're better because it's very easy to be on the outside complaining about something that you have no experience with, right? You've never done in your life, and say, "Oh, can you believe they're doing this? And can you believe they're doing that?" Right? Because there's a big difference between complaining and actually governing, right? And that we're finding out that a lot of the people around Trump who are basically DEI hires for him, they were either podcasters, influencers, right? Ex Fox News hosts, they're all struggling in their roles because none of them had any experience. And all of them were just used to talking online. Hi, Manny. Talking online, going on, going on Fox News, right? Going on Fox News, going on podcasts, complaining about Joe this and Biden that and Kamala's laugh. Can you believe how Kamala laughed? And then they all get into power and they're like, oh my God, it's like 24-hour work. Everything's so hard, the paperwork. Can you believe they make me work like more than 8 hours? Oh my, can you believe it? I had no idea you had to actually like work. I don't know what they were expecting, whether they're expecting was going to be like a 3-hour podcast to be it's just hilarious to me. And have to run, but thanks, Joe. Bye tomorrow. Thanks, Kimmy. Thanks for that. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So again, it's there's a big difference between like talking shit on a podcast and actually governing. And a lot of the Trump administration now are finding out about that. And I think that, and this is the thing about populism, right? Not just in America, but around the world. In the United Kingdom, you have Nigel Farage, who's a far right wing guy. Now, he's never actually ever ran. He's never been in government. So all these people will go, there's too much immigration, right? There's too much this, there's too much that, there's too many problems. The problem with these people saying this is that they have no solutions, right? They have no solutions at all. So they're going to, if they win and come into government, I guarantee you, everyone will be disappointed in them, right? The thing is, this is like Trump. Trump populism, right, is like populism. Being an outsider, being a podcast is fantastic as long as you don't actually govern. As soon as you govern, you get found out, right? You get found out as soon as you govern because these people are experts at criticizing and they have really bad. So, often think about this is I don't, as much as it's good to have an outsider, there's nothing wrong with someone having experience in government. So like, for example, someone might have been a mayor or someone might have been a governor. Someone might have worked in legislation, someone, at a lower level, whatever. I think that's a positive thing. And just saying, oh, they're part of the deep state it's just childish, right? Because again, why would you want someone just coming in with no experience? It's all based on what? And like, just because you have business experience, it's very different to run a business than it is to run a government, right? Running healthcare, if you run healthcare like a business, you're going to go out of money, right? So I think, again, a lot of this stuff I think Donald and Putin are, yeah, exactly, Donna. And so again, I think a lot of this stuff, the bathroom guy, thank you, bathroom guy, thank you for joining, thank you very much. Love the bathroom guy, yeah. Hello everyone, peace and matter, bathroom guy, thank you. Yeah. So again, I've always been, you know, not not a big thing about the populist thing. I don't mind populism, especially populism on the left. But what I always find is when people govern, whether it's from any side of politics, they generally always govern centre left or centre right. That's always what seems to happen, right? Because reality sets in. And when reality sets in, it's like, actually, we can't just do whatever we want. And actually, that thing we talked about that we thought was going to be really good, well, that might be good for that might help 10 people, but it might hurt 20 people. Running government is complicated. Policies are complicated. All these things are very complicated, right? So I do respect people who have some government experience. I don't respect Trump because Trump has been in power for a very long time and he doesn't care about policy. Even people who work with him will say, even people who like him, by the way, will say he doesn't like policy. They will give him a sheet of paper and he will just read the bullet points like that. And that's not a good thing, right? whatever you say about Obama, Obama loved policy. Do you remember during the Obama healthcare policy, he would sit there and he would debate Republicans and debate MAGA, and he'd go Section 8.9, Section 7.6. He really understood policy. And I think that's a really positive thing that people understand policy. And that's one of the reasons why I think, yeah, I think it's good to have someone there with a little bit of experience there. Yeah. Um, but someone like Trump, you know, is I want to say this other thing as well. So with Trump, we had, the other day, the Kennedy Center, right? And he basically changes the name of the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center. Now, so I went and did a bit of like a dive into it. I did a bit of a deep dive into it, right? And I was looking at it, and then I realized that the Kennedy Center has a board, right? And so what he did is he got rid of the people on the board that he didn't like, and he replaced the people on the board with loyalists, with Trump supporters on the Kennedy board, right? Then he made himself the chair of the board, right? But this part is actually funny, right? So he gets rid of the board at the Kennedy Center, replaces them all with loyalists, and then makes himself the chairman. Then he holds a press conference. Then this board that he put in there, he put the board in, right? And as the chairman, he had to like okay this was to change it from the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center, right? So just to recap, he gets rid of the board, replaces it with his own board, and he's now the chairman because he made himself the chairman. And they came up with, let's change it to the Trump Kennedy Center. Then he goes on TV, holds a press conference, and he says this with a completely straight face, not the slightest bit, and he says, I was quite surprised to find out that the board at the Kennedy Center had decided to change the name to include my name in there. And so he was like acting surprised that they had actually done that, even though he appointed the people on that board, and he would, as the chairman of that board, he would have had to give the okay for it, right? So, and he acted, and he went on TV and pretended like he was surprised about it, like he didn't know about it, right? So, again, something that encapsulates the Trump craziness is the way he treats the American people like idiots, right? And I know it's not the American people that I'm talking to on this, because all the American people I'm talking to on this Substack are highly intelligent people on this Substack, and very good looking. Donna, I know this is not about what we are talking about. Wait a sec. Uh, I know this is not what we're talking about, but I love all the koalas and animals there. Oh, right. Jim, pretty sure he can't change the name of the Kennedy Center without correct. Yeah, he can't. Jim, you're absolutely right. Yeah, he can't. He can't officially change it the same way he can't officially change the war of the defense to the Department of Defense to Department of War. You're absolutely right. But they have changed it on the website. So if you go on the Kennedy website, it now says the Trump Kennedy. So even though it's not official, they have actually changed the plaque, and the website says that. So in a lot of ways, he has in a way changed it, right? Because if someone says, I want to go to the Kennedy Center, it will now say the Trump Kennedy Center. So in a lot of ways, in terms of outward facing, it does actually now say the Trump Kennedy Center. So in some way, even though it's not official, it's, to a lot of people, if it's on the website, when they advertise it, it says Trump, all that stuff. But yeah. So let's go back to Donna. I know this is not about, we are talking about, I love the koalas and animals there. Oh, right. Is that the koalas and animals on my shirt or here? I think you might be talking about, there was some koalas and stuff there. Yeah. Or in Australia. Yeah. So I think Jim, you're absolutely right. It's not official, but yeah, the fact that he would go on TV and act surprised like that he didn't know that this, even though he was the chairman, is just hilarious to me. Like, how does, you know, there's no shame. He has no shame. He knows he's lying. He goes on national TV and just lies like that. It's like, if I'm a MAGA person, you would think just yeah, like, yeah. So have a little bit of respect for at least some of the people. Hi, Marnie. How you going, Marnie? Yeah, he changed in his maps to Gulf of America, but I hope the rest of the world didn't. Yes. No, in Australia, if you go on Google Maps in Australia and you go to, it still says Gulf of Mexico. And I'm pretty sure that's the same in Europe and most countries. I think it's only changed in America, but I don't think these things are going to stick. I think when Trump goes, all of these things are going to get changed backwards. I think the Gulf of Mexico get changed back to the Gulf of Mexico. I really don't think it's going to they're going to stick. Um, and again, it's just another thing of Trump making everything, and I mean everything about himself, all that. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I do have to go. I wanted to do a Substack live before I went, before Christmas and New Year's. So I probably won't do another one till the new year. So I especially want to do one for all my beautiful friends in America, Australia, all around the world. And I wanted to wish you guys very, very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a very Happy New Year. I'm so sorry that this is going on in America at the moment. Uh, but just so you know that in Australia, we're thinking about you guys in America. We feel you guys. We feel sympathetic towards you. We don't think so. So I wish we could have a conversation about Tamara, absolutely. And look, Tamara, we definitely will be doing that. He calls himself the greatest president since Lincoln. Clearly, he has no credibility. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Happiest of holidays to you and your family. Thanks, Marty. Same. Thanks, Marty. Thank you, everybody. I think he's very unwell. I live near Palm Beach, but anyway, thank you so much. Oh, Donna, so you live near him. Thank Dave from California. Thank you so much. I've had a great year talking to you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Dave from California. The bathroom guy, as always, Donna. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody who comes on here. Kimmy, thank you, Kimmy, everyone, all the locals. It's time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great new year. Thank you, Tamara. Happy holidays, Tamara. Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you, everybody. And I'm sure in the next year, it's going to be my New Year's resolution. It's going to be a New Year's resolution to to hate Trump even more in the new year. And so that's my New Year's resolution. It's a very positive one to have there. But thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Bye bye.